Yeah.
We're now live, Chair.
Okay. Good morning, councillors, officers, members of the public and press. Welcome to this meeting of the Finance and Policy Committee. This meeting is a remote meeting being live streamed and recorded. I will now hand over to the Democratic Services team for a roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'll just start the meeting by way of a roll call. Can members please indicate that they've received the agenda papers for this morning, including the additional papers they'll have received at the weekend, please, and that they can see and hear everyone online. Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher.
Yes, I can see and hear everyone, and I do have all the papers now. I came down to Civic and collected those that were missing today.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Councillor Brewer.
Good morning, and yes to everything.
We have apologies from Councillor Brown. Councillor Lindridge.
I can see, hear, and I've got the papers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Little.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall. Thank you.
Yes to all, sorry.
Councillor Moore.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yes to all. I was just
Councillor Smith. Right, yeah. Right. Councillor Tennant.
President, I have all the paperwork.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I can see and hear. I have the first set of papers, but haven't received the second papers.
Okay, we'll try and get those emailed through to you, Councillor.
Thank you.
We have apologies from Councillor Young, who has appointed Councillor Stokel as his substitute.
Present, and I've all the paperwork. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have online Chair Councillor Tony Richardson.
Yes, you.
Okay, just to remind members that if they can keep their microphones on mute during the meeting, just to reduce the background noise, particularly on the live stream, and also the reminder that if we are requiring any votes this morning, they'll be by way of a recorded vote by roll call. Thank you very much, Chair, and back to you.
Thank you, David. Are there any other apologies or anybody else, or is anybody else present who has not been indicated as part of the roll call? I believe we've got Mr. Razai as well, David, a member of the public.
Good morning.
Yes, yes, Chair. Mr. Razai is online with us.
Great. Thank you. Okay, any, declarations of interest. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the minutes then. It's 3.1. We've got the minutes for Finance and Policy Committee held on the 25th of February. I've got Councillor Akers-Belcher want to come in on that one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, I've been emailing the Chief Solicitor, Managing Director and Director of Finance with regards to the final settlement that was alluded to in the last Finance and Policy meeting under the MTFS. The announcement that I received said that the Council within that settlement was receiving a share of £670 million to be used up and above what it currently does on LCTS to help people with their council tax. And I would just like it noted in the minutes and formally request that we get clarification from the government, because as it stands, we are in breach of that announcement because we've received a share of £670 million and we're actually doing nothing up and above what we normally do under LCTS to help those hardest hit because of the pandemic with regards to the council tax. And I would just like a written update for all members on clarification of the final settlement and the use of that money.
Okay, I'm sure we can get a written clarification. That's not a problem. But obviously, I do challenge the comments made about not helping anybody. We go above and beyond with the local council tax support scheme that we already have in place, and we've frozen council tax for everybody, meaning that those residents would not pay any extra on top of that. Councillor Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going a bit forward first, Shane. I'd like to ask
what was mentioned about the money we'd had for COVID, and I thought Chris was putting some paperwork together for it, what we'd had and what's been spent.
As part of the minutes from the last Finance and Policy Committee, or was that a part of, was that
I think
as a result of full
it was last
council?
time.
Oh, right. Okay. That's coming in the March meeting, Councillor Richardson.
All right. Cheers, Shane. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councillor Akers-Belcher, your hand's still up. Do you want to? Did you have another point to raise?
I just think that you've missed, like, what I was trying to say with regards to my point, that the announcement that I received through actually said that we were receiving a share of money to help those, with the council tax up and above what we normally do. Well, we normally give 12%, and that's all we do in this year. And I understand, about freezing council tax, but all I'm asking for is what is our share of the £670 million, and get clarification off the government, and then articulate what we are actually doing with our share.
Okay, I'll bring Mr. Little in to reply.
Thank you, Chair. I think this year we dealt with it in the report to F&P on the 25th of January. At that time, we advised members that our share of the national funding was 1,869,000. I think at that time we advised members, and I've got the report in front of me. It talked about what the government's initial statements were around that funding. And this is another one where I'll be quite honest with you. I think the government are being a bit disingenuous with some of the way they're presenting some of the information. I'll take members back to the big picture. The government have said local authorities are getting a 4.5% increase in spending power. As we said in the MTFS report, 80% of that, or more than 80%, was predicated on an assumption that councils would increase council tax, and that's the type of overall settlement in the announcements that are being made. In relation to that funding, the government were very clear in the provisional settlement around that funding was aimed at supporting councils to meet the additional costs of providing local council tax support in 21-22 as a result of the increase in unemployment. It did then go on to, and I think this is touching on the point that Councillor Akers-Belcher has raised, that it was then up to local discretion as to whether any of that funding was used to do anything additional to local council tax support. It's a completely different picture to the current year, where the government did provide funding to authorities and effectively mandated us to make a further reduction in local council tax support households bills. They're not doing that for 21-22. I think in terms of the 1.869 million that the authorities receiving, effectively we set out in the previous MTFS report that 872,000 was needed to offset the loss of income from an increase in LCTS households. And then on the back of the decisions made by Council and F&P to freeze council tax, 985,000 of the available funding is allocated to offset the loss of that income and effectively to effectively protect all council taxpayers, and also importantly to protect the council's budget. So hopefully that gives the information that relates to that issue.
Thank you for that.
Chair, can I come back that we will seek the clarification from government, though?
Okay, yeah, we'll seek clarification, yes. Obviously, given the comments, other than the comments, that Councillor Akers-Belcher has raised, are there any other questions or comments for Finance and Policy meeting on the 25th of February? And if not, can we take those as agreed? See no dissent. Thank you. Got the minutes for the Safer Hartlepool Partnership held the 13th of November. Again, any questions or comments from that one? If not, if there's no dissent, we'll take those as agreed as well. And then finally, the minutes of the Health and Wellbeing Board on the 7th of September 2020. See no indications. Okay, can we take those as agreed as well? Great, thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 4 then. We have a public question from Mr. Dara Brazai. Starib, if you would like to just unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question. You're still muted.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to thank everybody and the chairman for giving me the opportunity to come and ask a few questions as regarding of the leisure centre going on Jackson Landing. Would I have the permissions of the members and the chairman to give 2 or 3 minutes presentation why I'm here and what's it about? And before I ask those questions, would you allow me 2 or 3 minutes?
Well, it'd be better if you'd ask the question, Mr. Azai, and then obviously if there's any debate around it and discussion, we can bring that up afterwards if that's all right.
Right. I'm here as the chairman of hospitality, and also I'm in a few groups of the business people, and we involve the residents too. And for the last few years, we have had in hospitality in our HLM meeting, we have had debates, and we have debated for an iconic building that we think the town needs something special to improve the daytime and the nighttime economy. And we believe the best location for that, a prime location, would be Jackson Landing, because it's not near any housing. It's got plenty of car parks, and we also benefit all the businesses surrounding, and it would bring the employment that desperately need. The town coming out of COVID-19 is going to be absolutely desperate. The retail businesses are finished, the hospitality going through brain hemorrhage, and we think that relocating the leisure centre is not going to bring any prosperity to the area. It would be the best location of the town. The jewel of crown is going to be put a leisure centre where people go in the leisure centre and come out straight home, and it doesn't really benefit anybody. However, my questions are, which I would like to have the opportunity to expand on them. My questions are that we, as the council, not long ago in 2017, we had the council enacted their policy that they would no longer run any commercial operation that did not make any profit. And subsequently, we closed the garden centre and Canfield. And can you confirm that the council has a robust business case for the new £20 million leisure facility? We're not talking about 20 million. By the time it's built, it will go exceed that. And we also want to be sure that the £10 million the council has got to borrow, that wouldn't be a burden on the council taxpayers. And my second question would be, what is the estimated annual payment of the borrowing of the £10 million on monetary terms, as well as percentage increase on the council tax? And I would have other questions as well. Is it possible to deal with those two first?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, thank you very much for your question. I mean, personally, I was delighted last year when we announced our plans to replace Millhouse Leisure Centre, which is in desperate need of replacement to ensure Hartlepool people do have access to the best facilities possible moving forward. Whether you agree with it or not, the fact of the matter is that Hartlepool does now need a new leisure facility. You can't get away from that fact. And so obviously it was right for us to move forward, starting the ball rolling in replacing that. It is, however, completely wrong, in my opinion, to compare a leisure facility to a garden centre. The garden centre should be run as a commercial operation, and the decision by the previous administration to close that loss-making facility was indeed the right one. To run a public leisure centre on purely commercial basis would only be possible if fees and charges were increased to a level that many people in Hartlepool could not afford. Therefore, the new facility will continue to require a public subsidy, as is the case with the majority of public leisure centres right across the country. The cost of operating the current facility are funded from the combination of charges paid by users, government grant received to support all local services, and council tax. And the net cost of the leisure centre is about 1% or just less than 1% of the actual council tax people pay, individuals pay, sorry. And the majority of council tax, 58% of which is spent on adult and children's social care. So yes, we are working very hard to ensure that the new facility attracts many more visitors to generate more income and reduce the council tax contribution. And the way of doing that is making sure that whatever offer we have there, and we carefully select the offer that we have there to make sure it's an attraction in itself and not just a bog standard run-of-the-mill leisure centre as we've come to know them. Just as Haven Point has done in South Shields, it become an attraction that people travel from all over to attend. The new facility will be funded from a combination of grant from the Combined Authority and borrowing, and the budget report approved in December 19 provided the funding to repay the borrowing costs. So these don't need to be funded by further council tax increases. I think it's worth pointing out at this point that if a leisure, you've alluded to some figures there, Mr. Azai, and the fact of the matter is if it was going to cost that much, that's how much we would have to spend to replace a leisure centre wherever it went. And if your concern is that we would have to borrow £10 million to build a leisure centre, if it isn't built on the former Jackson's Landing site, we would have to borrow up to £20 million to build a new facility. So using the site as it currently is, the current plan for it, provides a state-of-the-art new leisure facility for the people of Hartlepool and the children of Hartlepool for generations moving forward, but it also does so in a cost-efficient way that protects ratepayers and protects our income as a council moving forward.
Right. What I would like to ask, how much has the council already spent or committed to spend on the feasibility and the design of the leisure centre? How much have you spent already?
I don't have those figures off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
So you don't know how much
it's all within, off the top of my head, no, because
design and architecture of the place.
Well, we've just appointed an architect, so it would. What I would say is the current.
You don't know how much you have spent.
Off the top of my head, no. But do you have any costings for a state-of-the-art fancy building that would be an attraction or a business case for it as you're proposing?
Right, but that's why I wanted 2 or 3 minutes opportunity to do a presentation. What we have proposed for the last few years, which we have got elected member, the hospitality, the Hartlepool Licensing Association, we are on the shop floor, we understand the daytime economy, the nighttime economy, and we are trying the hardest to bring people into Hartlepool. We don't believe that the leisure centre would. However, we believe an iconic building on its own merit, it would attract people. And also having an iconic building, which is going to hold exhibition, concert, sports tournament, multi-purpose, can have at least minimum 10 units inside. Just those 10 units is going to bring you £250,000 rental. On top of that, you have got the assets coming from the actual venue. Then you have got all the advertising opportunity. You can raise hundreds of thousands of pounds by having advertising inside and outside that building. But does anybody want to advertise in a leisure centre? What sort of, we believe that if you put an iconic building, multi-purpose, is going to bring thousands of people every week to the town, and it would improve the economy of the town. It would create all the jobs. My next question from you.
No, hang on, Mr. Azai, because obviously that is your belief, and I respect.
No, it's not my belief.
But it's not. It hasn't always been your belief, has it? No, I'm sorry, Mr. Azai. Mr. Azai, it hasn't always been your belief, has it? Because I have a website open in front of me, which was produced by yourself just a couple of years ago, in which you were specifically, in some of the ideas within that, you were specifically saying that although it's next door to an existing gym, a gym, a more substantial gym, would be very good, as would including a swimming pool. I'm looking at it now as it happens, and also an idea of putting an ice rink into the building. Now, I respect that an iconic building may attract visitors, but we have iconic buildings, and if members cast our minds back to the capital plan, we're investing in our iconic buildings and the Borough Hall and the Town Hall Theatre to attract visitors into the town. Part of the consultation that we undertook in replacing the existing leisure facility, we found that residents and even members staff members in the council were travelling out of Hartlepool to attend much better leisure facilities. And our ambition is to make sure that we provide a facility that will have the reverse. It will attract people from outside coming in. It won't be a bog standard leisure facility. It will offer much more than any other leisure facility in the local area does, and therefore attract people. We will still be able to attract visitors into the town with our existing facilities that we're investing heavily into, as is right to do. But in relation to the Jackson's Landing site, we had an iconic building on there that had commercial units in there that could have been used for multi-purpose. It sat empty for over 10 years and in the end was pulled down, and nobody did anything about it. Nobody made any changes. Nobody came forward with proposals or bought it at that point. I've got Councillor Smith.
Thank you. This leisure centre went out to consultation. Everybody was asked. It was put on the internet. It was put out into the local news, etc., for people to come back with ideas of what they actually wanted. Why do we wait till now, when the foot is already in the door, to come up and totally disagree with what we want to do forward? The leisure centre as it is falling apart. It's costing us thousands to keep afloat. There is tiles that are falling off the floor. The sauna facility is unable to be used. So to be able to revamp that would cost far more than it would to start a new facility. I was part of the committee. They agreed the new leisure facility, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. Looked at all of the monetary values of how much it was going to cost. I asked more questions than anybody on that committee to make sure that it didn't cost the council tax any more money. So unfortunately, Darab, I totally disagree with everything you're saying. You come from a hotel and licensing background, so of course all you would want to do is look at that dimension instead of looking at what all of Hartlepool need, which is a brand new leisure facility so people in Hartlepool keep the money in Hartlepool and use our facilities instead of going to Splash and elsewhere. So unfortunately, no, I totally disagree with what you've said.
Excuse me, can I just come back? I haven't got any website where I have said it's a good idea putting a gym next to another gym. If anything, I had said it doesn't make sense when we already have got a gym in there to put another one next to it. That's the first thing. The second thing, my background is not just licensing. I have got a few companies and I have got outlets all over in the town. And I am aware of what goes on daytime and I'm aware of what goes on nighttime. I have attended in the last few years every regeneration meeting which is open to the businesses, and I have done presentation as regarding of the iconic building, and I have been shot. I have been told a lot of times to shut my mouth and keep quiet because we want to build a five-star.
Excuse me, I'm Vice Chair of Regeneration within Hartlepool, and you have never attended a single meeting in our Regeneration, the council. No. So I don't know who you're saying is telling you to shut your mouth, but clearly not a Regeneration meeting.
Can we restore some order, please? Mr. Razai, 1 second.
Sure.
Can we just restore some order, please, and let's go through the chair.
Right.
Thank you.
This is the regeneration meeting which is open to the businesses to have them in the college. They are the meetings that I have attended. I have had a lot of meetings with the officers and I have spoken in length. I have spoken in length with a lot of the councillors. And can I also mention, we have got the buildings 16th century, 17th, 18th, 19th century, which we are all proud of. 100 of them in the town. Please name me one building which has been built in the last 70 years which we are proud of, and we are living for the next generation. If we are saying a leisure centre is going to bring people into the town, I think we are kidding ourselves, because people who go out of town for leisure centre, they are having a day out. They would still go out. People who go to leisure centre, they go in, go out, straight away home. They don't flourish the businesses surrounding what the town needs. What I'm speaking in here, I'm not speaking about Darab. I'm nearly 65 and I'll soon be retired. I have got a responsibility as the chairman of Hartlepool Licensing Association, as the members, to come in and give the messages and saying how everybody feels. You don't want, as the councillors, to feel that the business people and the resident feel disconnected, because what their wishes is, it doesn't come true, it doesn't happen. But I'm here begging you to do something to live for the future generation. A leisure centre is not going to cut it. You already admitted it's going to cost you a lot of money. You already admitted you don't know how much it's going to cost.
Mr. Azai, you've already admitted you don't know how much an iconic building would cost. You've already admitted there is no business case for it. You just want an iconic building that will apparently attract. I respect your position, but I respectfully disagree with it as well. A leisure centre will provide for future generations of people within the town, and it isn't just a traditional leisure centre being proposed, as you may think, and there is a wider regeneration scheme happening around that site, which includes, as I'm sure Councillor Regis Belcher will mention, an expansion, a large expansion of the National Museum of the Royal Navy, which will again attract people from around from around the country, because it's a site of national importance, and what they're proposing does have the option there to bring in multiple people from all over the place. So I think it's about looking at what we need, looking at what we aspire to, and providing the best option moving forward. Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. You've just asked what iconic building that we've built in the last 70 years. The Historic Quay is that iconic building that people come from far and wide to come and see it. We also have been mentioned of a centre of excellence for the triathlons, etc., where we can bring more revenue to the hotel industry when we put these events on for the decathlons and stuff like that. This was on a survey for God knows how long for different sites across the town. It wasn't just said, oh, we're going to have it there and that's it. It went out to public consultation. So why now, like 18 months later, you're coming back to us now and saying, why are we doing it there? That's what I can't understand. Right. But we have got a historical building, which is the Historic Quay.
Can I?
Hold on. Just hold on, sorry. We've got a couple of other people that have been waiting to come in, and there may be subsequent questions from it. So, Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a number of points I want to raise, so that bear with me on some of the points. So, Mr. Razai raised the point about wanting some sort of iconic building. I mean, as has been mentioned previously, there are a number of iconic buildings in the town, and we are investing on getting them back up to a good standard, so it's available to the public and it's attractive for people to visit. Some of those buildings have been mentioned already. Why we need another one, and it wouldn't necessarily be iconic if it was brand new. It takes time to build the name iconic, doesn't it? It's a historic thing, isn't it? So it doesn't really apply in this regard. You could argue the previous building that was pulled down on Jackson's Landing was iconic, but potentially for all the wrong reasons. I actually would prefer, on a personal level, I much prefer something practical, something realistic, and delivers modern amenities to the town, which replaces the existing run-down and frankly out of date Mill House Leisure Centre, which just doesn't do the job anymore. And we have a statutory duty as an authority to provide leisure facilities, and if we can do so at a reduced cost to the council, with support funding from outside, then we would be mad to turn that down. Absolutely mad to turn it down. I've already mentioned that the mill house is not up to scratch, so it needs replacing one way or another. And I think that site at Jackson's Landing is an appropriate site for it. It's got a strong business case behind it, and there are a lot of processes being put in place in order to get that moving forward quickly. I think Lisa made an incredibly powerful point that why now that people are raising these points. This has been available to the public for quite some time. If anybody had anything they wanted to raise, they could have done so. And why now? It does question that's a big question to be answered. And another thing as well, what's really important is that we as an authority, certainly from a health perspective, are trying to promote healthy living and actually give people opportunity to get active. And if we can have a state-of-the-art leisure facility that provides lots of different activities to people, more so than ever could, then I think that would be it. And any suggestion from, I mean, I've heard so many ideas that could have been used for this site, such as a hotel. I mean, I would absolutely wholeheartedly oppose any attempt to put a hotel on that site. Why? Because that would only be a benefit for the private sector. And if we look at what happened in Stockton with the hotel being built there, it's not exactly been the economic boon that was promoted when it was being put forward by Stockton Council. So I would wholeheartedly remind councillors that is not a plan going forward. I'm wholeheartedly in support of a state-of-the-art leisure centre and making sure it provides facilities badly needed in the town and also promotes healthy living. Thank you.
Can I?
Thank you, Councillor Tennant. I got Denise McGuckin wanting to.
Thank you, Chair. It's just really to support what some of the members have been saying. So on the 30th of January 2020, this committee considered a full appraisal regarding the replacement of the Mill House Leisure Centre as part of our playing pitch and indoor facility strategy, and a full consultation programme had been underway, not just looking at the leisure development but also the wider leisure facility. A number of options regarding sites were considered, and as part of that appraisal system, the weighting for the waterfront development came out the highest, so that was fully supported. So it was just to allow members, just to give them that evidence to support what they've been saying, that this decision was made on the 30th of January 2020. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Akers-Belcher.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, it's just from a clarification point of view, and I understand there's been a couple of comments made, and I just want to, comment on what people have already said. The first one was relating to, trying to compare it to the closure of, the garden centre, and I was part of that decision, and it was right and proper that we closed the garden centre. But, to put it in, a decision of the previous administration, it was a decision after a hangover from what happened under the administration before, when we had independent elected mayor, where decisions were being made to spend money on commercial ventures that were done behind the scenes. And we have a very open governance arrangement now where decisions are made in public. And the decision, that we made was very public. Some people liked the idea, some people didn't like the idea, but it was made because the council policy was not to continue using public money on a commercial venture that was going to lose money. So just for clarity, that's all I want to say on that. The other item,
sorry, just to point, that's kind of what I was trying to get at, saying the decision that you took was, I believe, the correct one at the time.
Yeah, I was just trying to put it into context. I'm not being disrespectful. It's just that we did get a lot of flack at the time. The other thing is that Councillor Tennant has alluded to the strong business case for the leisure centre, and I've been party to conversations to ensure that there's a commercial dimension, to that. And I think it's really important in order to allay any fears, and we can't answer all of Mr. Azai's questions today, but it may be worthwhile in order to, bring something forward, because I'm chair of regeneration and I haven't seen the strong business case. So I think, at some point we need to bring that forward. And I understand that we always support sport and recreation through public health monies because we subsidise it to make it affordable. And I just think it's right and proper as a listening council. We've done the consultation. We're there to be transparent, is at least be open and honest and say, this is the cost. This is what we're going to borrow. This is what we potentially will have income from it. And this is what we're going to subsidise. Going forward. And I don't think that's an unfair ask in order to be transparent in our workings, because the decision's been made, and I know how much money we've spent already. We've got the papers, some of them in front of us today, but I think we need to be honest with the public, and say this is the cost, going forward. And that's not downgrading the decision. It's just being frank with people around sport and recreation, because I know this year sport and recreation, our income, or even Millhouse All Sport and Recreation, I've seen the figures. You're talking about £1 million losses this year, and that's because of the pandemic. What we need to do is put it into context going forward and say this is what we invest and this is going to be our return on the investment.
I don't disagree. I'm very mindful of the fact that we're going out to tender very shortly, and the last thing we'll want to do is to kind of go out there publicly and say this is what our budget is, because it would be foolish of us to tell potential people who are tendering for the build work exactly how much we have to spend. That's all I'm being quite mindful of. I'm more than happy for us to be as open and transparent as possible, but obviously don't want to end up putting the council on the back foot. That's all. Councillor Richardson.
I'd just like to know, once it does go ahead, Shane, what's happening with the old Millhouse Baths? Is that land going to be kept for the council or sold to private developers?
As it currently stands, it falls under Councillor Akers-Belcher's remit at the moment, but as it currently stands, Councillor Richardson, the whole area around there is currently being master planned, so it would include kind of the area where Victoria Park is, Millhouse, and what we call the Civic Quarter, so from Millhouse Leisure Centre up to pretty much where the Civic Centre itself is. So it's about master planning the whole site, and rather than just looking at one little bit on its own and say we'll sell it off for a quick buck, it's what we can do to maximise everything possible coming out of it.
So we could actually build houses on there as well, yeah?
If we wanted to, yeah.
Thank you.
Denise McGuckin.
Thank you, Chair. It was just in response to the questions for the business case. We're looking at our strategic outcomes pathway model at the moment for the whole of the leisure facilities, not just the waterfront, and that deals with outcomes, interventions, commitment and everything else. That will be work that unfortunately, it has been delayed due to the pandemic. A lot of architects and QSs were furloughed, so not council architects but in the private sector, and we'd obviously were utilising this private sector to support us in this venture. So that robust business case has been delayed slightly and will conclude, we hope, around May, June time. So hopefully we'll be able to bring it back to members then.
Thank you. I thank Mr. Rezai for his question and the debate that's followed it today, and we'll make progress. So we've got item 5.1, Council Plan, Managing Director.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to ask the committee to agree the proposed council plan for this coming financial year to 2023-24 and to go to council for approval. Prior to COVID-19 pandemic, work was underway to prepare a new council plan which covered the period from the previous year to 22-23, and that was supposed to go to council in March. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, all meetings were cancelled and the decision was deferred as the council focused on its COVID-19 response. So currently we do not have an adopted council plan in place. However, in November of last year, we agreed that we would take forward the council plan that we had already previously considered by Finance and Policy, and also look at the implications from the COVID pandemic and actually review and reflect our council plan for the next 3 years. This council plan, which is in front of members today, reflects the issues, concerns and opportunities that have come out from the consultation of our council plan. The plan moves away from what was previously a departmental specific issues, which is not to say there aren't any, but as a CMT, and I know members agree, we continue to deal with challenges in our community that cannot be addressed by one department or just a council. We need to work with our partners and also across the council, as there are many cross-cutting issues. This council plan attempts to put the person in the middle and works as a collective to address these challenges that any individual may face. So it'll be like a team around approach. Members will be aware of that. So Finance and Policy is recommended to agree today's the council plan and forward it to council for later this month for consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Denise. Personally, I think the plan that's come forward is a good one, and it's much easier to understand and which sets out exactly what we want to do. And as Denise is saying, I love the fact that it actually puts our residents and the people at the centre of everything we do. But I'm happy to have any questions or comments from members on this. Councillor Akers-Belcher.
Thank you, Chair. It was just one really, and it was just some clarity, and it has on page 2, resilient and resourceful communities with opportunities for all, and there's an item under reduce poverty, deprivation and inequality across the borough. So is there any way that we can have some, like, something that's helpful for members to demonstrate, like, what that actually means on the ground? And perhaps cover things like we've got local welfare support, we've got our children's hub, we give money every year to the food bank and things like that, just so that when we get questioned on it, we've got a bit of detail that sits behind it. Like, because it's all well and good having a plan, but then someone comes to you and say, but what are you actually doing about it?
Almost set of performance indicators that we'll specifically be looking at to measure that.
Yeah, we've always had that in the past, and I know it exists. It's just that on that particular one, because it cuts across every person's policy area about tackling family poverty. And one of the things I probably should have asked previously is how much are we actually giving the food bank this year? It will be helpful to know how much they're receiving, given they're under crisis at the moment.
Come back.
Yes, please, Denise.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was making notes.
No, that's fine. Absolutely, we will be coming back on a number of these issues regarding the measures taking place. Councillor Akers-Belcher is more than happy to do that. And on the food bank information, well, we will get that to members. We obviously haven't got it with us today, but we will get that too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Akers-Belcher. Was there any, I did see another hand go up at one point. Councillor Lindridge.
Thanks, Chair. This actually links into the public question, really. If it's a pity it wasn't raised before. We're talking about the leisure centre, and if we're looking at the plan, the council plan we put forward here, it's going to have increased participation in physical activity. It's a fit for purpose leisure and sport recreational facilities. We're going to have connectivity. So a lot of these questions have been answered in the public question by Mr. Azai. It is for the benefit of the people, and we have planned things out. So as far as I'm concerned, we're spot on with what we're actually doing, and I'll be supporting this. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lindridge. Anybody else? If not, we'll look at the recommendations on page 3. The recommendation is for us to agree the council plan for 21-22, 23-24 and send this forward to full council for adoption. Is there any dissent for that? No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to 5.2, the medium-term financial strategy, Director of Resources and Development.
Thank you, Chair. This report's just to give you an update on the final local government settlement and just set out the arrangements for finalising the technical budget and council tax calculations that are referred to council on the 25th of February. I think I've already indicated that there weren't any changes in the final settlement. Interestingly, the final settlement was published on the 4th of February. It was then debated by Parliament on the 10th of February. I think every year that I can remember, it was always done in the other order, that it was debated in Parliament and then published. That just proves how unusual the settlement announcements have been this year. And obviously, I've got the comment from earlier that we need to clarify the 670,000 that members have requested. Section 5 deals with the legal issues and the statutory budget calculations. I'm sure members are familiar that we've got precept bodies that set their own council tax levels in accordance with the limits set by the government. They're summarised at paragraph 5.3. The Police and Crime Commissioners were given a limit of up to £15. Since the report was prepared, Cleveland Police and Crime Commissioners actually agreed an increase at Band D of £5.19, so substantially below the limit they're allowed, and their increase works out at 1.99%. And on Friday, Cleveland Fire Authority approved a 1.9% increase, which is £1.50 at Band D. For members' information, the report to Council will set out that when you incorporate the freeze for the Council and the freeze in the Adult Social Care Precept, the overall bill that people will pay without a parish council precept will go up by 0.32%. On the year, and that just reflects the mix of the different council taxes that make up the overall figure. And the recommendations, Chair, are set out in section 7 of the report.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Akers-Belcher.
It was just a point of clarity, Chair. It's just that Chris has just mentioned 670,000, but it isn't. It's our share of 670 million. Which is actually £1.869 million, I believe. Just like, if it's been minuted, it isn't 670,000, it's actually 1.869 million, our share of 670 million.
Sorry, I should have said 670 million nationally. Apologies for that.
Thank you.
At least I was listening, Chris.
Are there any other questions or comments on this part? Okay, so the recommendation then is that we note the local government finance settlement. Well, both are to note. Is there any dissent on those? No, thank you. Next one then, 7.1, allocation of your community pot. Jill Harrison.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. So members will recall that at previous meetings, the community pot was created, and this was specifically to support voluntary sector activity that was particularly supporting residents who'd been impacted adversely by the pandemic. So at previous committee meetings, as I said, the pot was created and members also agreed the criteria and application process. So following that decision, we've obviously been out to voluntary sector partners to seek bids to utilise this funding. The detail of those is provided in confidential Appendix 1. There was a total of 18 applications received with a total funding request for just over £1 million. There was £200,000 to allocate. So the panel that was agreed previously considered each of those applications, and the recommendations from the panel for approval are summarised in section 6.2. There is additional funding available from other sources which we're seeking to supplement this with and to signpost unsuccessful bids where appropriate to try and support a wider range of VCS organisations. So the recommendation is that Finance and Policy Committee approve the allocation of funding as set out in section 6, and the funding will then be directed to those successful organisations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jill. Just a couple of questions from me. The first one is I know the answer to it, but just for the sake of clarity and for members of the public or anybody else that's watching, the panel that made up and decided where the community grants are going, can you confirm that there was no member involvement in that, and that so no elected member has had any part in the decision making of where these grants are going?
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. The panel membership is summarised in 4.2. It was officers of the council and a representative from the voluntary and community sector.
Brilliant, thank you. And so then the final two then is part of the criteria that was previously set by this committee. Then what we were very keen to make sure that the grants were used for projects that would show that they would be sustainable once the grant funding ran out, and that there weren't a duplication of services. Are you and was the panel confident then that everything that has been chosen does meet those two criteria?
Yes, so the two of the criteria that we considered when reviewing the bids were whether there was duplication, whether this was something that was already in place. So we were confident that those that are recommended are an enhancement of what was already in place. All applicants were also asked to provide information on an exit strategy and sustainability. So all of those that are recommended did score highly in terms of having that in place. And this was very much seen as funding that would supplement and enhance additional activity, or have longer term benefits in terms of doing a piece of work using this money that would then have a longer term impact for the town.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Are there any other questions or comments from other members? Councillor Smith.
Hi, did we check the financial viability of each company? Have they submitted accounts? Have they had a year's worth of trading? I'd rather not give money to companies that don't submit accounts to whoever they need to submit it to, and people who literally have only been around for a month or so didn't have to submit accounts, so they've got no financial background. I know we look at the viability of them being able to continue it forward, but that's just a plan. There's no actual proof that they could bring it forward unless you've got proof that they could continue it forward. I mean, I could actually say, well, I can continue this for the next 6 months by doing X, Y, and Z, but X, Y, and Z might not actually be in place. So did you check any previous finances, and going forward, did you double check that they could actually do it?
In terms of the finances, that wasn't part of the application process. The majority of the applicants are established voluntary and community sector organisations. A number of them have been operating in the town for a significant number of years. They're not businesses generally, so they would be required to register their accounts through the Charity Commission or voluntary sector accounting processes. So that information is generally publicly available. In terms of the exit strategy and moving forward, I suppose there is always an element of uncertainty in that, particularly at the moment in terms of the pandemic. But what the organisations have generally done is been able to evidence that they're working in partnership. They've been able to evidence where they have existing funding and what benefits this additional funding would bring. And have also committed to work with us going forward in terms of monitoring the impact of the resources and working with us on their performance measures and outcomes.
Can I just come back?
Yeah.
I mean, we have previously, a long time ago, give money to community voluntary organisations that don't have correct accounts and have used money as they see fit. And I think we should put a fail-safe in place when we do give out this type of money, that we're not giving it to the same types of organisations. I don't think that saying that we could look online to see if they have registered their accounts to the to the charity sector is a good enough fail-safe, to be honest. Sorry. We're dealing with a lot of money and we should be giving it to, yes, the right people who can actually carry out the work, but B, some people who are financially stable and are doing the correct accounts.
Okay. Well, I take your comment there, Councillor Smith, but was there an actual suggestion of how you would achieve that?
Well, it would be all part of the application process, wouldn't it? That you would look at a background check of some sort, of when people go through the procurement process or bidding process, I'm sure, and you can shoot me down in flames if I'm wrong, they sometimes ask for accounting and to make sure that that company that you're giving the work to is financially viable. I don't understand why we don't do that to the voluntary community sector. You should, if we're going to get, and I'm not talking money, but if we're going to give a substantial amount of money to a lot of organisations, and we've been burnt in the past, I think we should do more due diligent checks to make sure that money that the organisations are spending money in the correct manner. And then if they are spending the money in the correct manner and have correct books, then we are able to then go forward, help to financially support them.
I heard Jill say that as part. I'm getting massive feedback of somebody.
It'd be me, sorry, my earphones have run out of battery.
All right, can you just mute yourself a sec, thanks. As part of what Jill was saying in response to, I think it was the first question you posed, Councillor Smith, she did say that we were able to, applicants had to demonstrate financial viability previously, and in each case, or in the vast majority of cases, they're showing how they are currently receiving grant funding off other organisations and how they'll be using this to enhance that and who they'll be working in partnership with. I don't know if that goes some way to alleviate some of your concerns.
It doesn't. I mean, we should do our due diligence. It's as simple as that. If we are going to give money out to people, we need to know that it's being spent correctly and being logged correctly. It's as simple as that. And it's a simple check to do. Just saying that they should be registered or they should have submitted their accounts with the Charity Commission is not good enough in my behalf, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Little.
Right, come on, sorry. I totally agree with what Lisa's just said there. We do need to check where these monies that are going. If we haven't asked them now, if whoever gets awarded the monies, it should be included in like how they've spent the money, where's it gone, if they spent it on feeding our residents, how much was fed on, like spent there, if it was on education, how much was spent in education. We can't just give them pots of money and not asking where it's all gone. And it's, sorry, I'm in a bit pain, so I'm going to finish.
Jill?
I suppose just to clarify, as I said, each of the organisations, when they submitted an application, confirmed that they would work with us to monitor how the funding was spent and to provide that feedback. So obviously, as the funding's spent, there will be updates back to committee about what's been achieved with that funding. So that was built in. Obviously, the application process was previously agreed through a Finance and Policy Committee, and that was identified at the time. So that's been built into the process.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a couple of points. Going back to 6.2 on the graph, it says supported housing and counselling for homeless and vulnerable. I just want to query, did we not receive a separate pot of money? Have we spent it? And is that why that's in there then? Because we don't have anything left? And I do have another point.
Either Denise or Jill, yeah.
Yes, Councillor Marshall, you are right. We have got a separate pot, and we're actually putting together a new way of working for that, and that will come to members at a later date. And that is quite a change to how we operate. So we're having to look at staffing structures and everything around that. So that will come. But you're right. But I think this pot of here is in addition to what we will be changing how we provide that service. So that data will come back to FMP in due course.
Right, thank you. And the other thing I'd like to raise, 6.3, it says further details regarding the VCS. This is in the pink papers. I would like to ask a question on it, but I'm prepared to wait till the end if you want.
Well, we might as well just get it over and done with, because otherwise...
That's fine.
Yeah. Apologies, I should have asked if there was any questions on the pink papers first, because then we could have moved this agenda item to the back. So
right.
If you want to go into... Actually, I tell you what, we'll get some of the other questions out of the way first, Councillor Marshall, if that's all right. And
that's
then
fine.
We'll go into closed session.
All right.
Councillor Lindridge.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I take on board what Councillor Smith said and the concerns, and also what the Chair has said, that members weren't part of the consultation process. It was officers, right? I would be disappointed if, in a nutshell, really, that we've got experienced officers and they hadn't applied due diligence. I'm confident that the officers that we've got would do that due diligence, and they've linked in with the VCS and partnerships and looked at the viability of the partnerships that they're linking in with, and that they would be sustainable. So to me, it should be straightforward. We are not experts. The members are not experts. We are rubber stamping the recommendations, but I do appreciate what the previous councillor said. We need to be confident, right, that the information that's presented to us, that when we rubber stamp that, it is viable going forward. So it's quite simply that from me. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lindridge. Councillor Richardson. All right, okay, sorry. Councillor Richardson's left as he thought we were going into pink. Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just largely it's to sort of highlight, reiterate what Jim's just said. You know, I'm confident that officers will have gone through this with a fine-tooth comb. You know, I'm not suggesting. I don't think anyone's suggesting that they haven't done that. But what I could suggest with some of the concerns that have been raised from other councillors, that perhaps if we go through a community pot again in the future, that we also review the criteria and application process, and whether councillors feel that there should be additional processes should be implemented, then perhaps that's when we could look at that. But as where we are now, I think it looks acceptable to me.
Thank you, Councillor Tennant. Councillor Lindridge.
So I don't know whether you've mentioned pinks. Now, I've got no pink papers. Now, I don't know whether mine's been printed on white, so I don't want to comment on them yet. If we have to go into closed session, obviously I can raise the questions then. But I've got no pink papers under my two sets of...
If they have been printed in white, Councillor Lindridge, at the top of the page, they should be at the back, it'll say not for publication, if they've been printed on white.
All right. Can't see them at the moment, but you know, I'm happy to raise any questions if I'm concerned if we go into pink discussions.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'll need somebody then to move that we move into a closed session to answer these questions, and then someone to second it.
Yeah. Chair, can I just say that, like Councillor Lindridge, I also haven't got those pink papers.
Okay, thank you. Have you got the? Can I ask? Have you both got the electronic version of the papers? Because sometimes, right, okay. I was going to say sometimes the not for publication part is sent as a separate attachment.
Shane, can
David,
I just make? Oh, sorry. Go on.
Sorry, one second, David. Could we try and get a copy of those not for publication parts emailed out to Councillor Thomas and Lindridge, please?
I'm just doing it now, Chair.
Can I just make a point?
Yeah.
Yeah. The issue around the applications, having worked in the voluntary sector for over 20 years previously, it was never an issue about the application. It was always an issue about the monitoring, the paperwork. When Marjorie and I looked at it, we have had previous discussions related into the monitoring of projects going forward. It was always that, as the ex-monitoring officer for Ofcare, if you did ESF, ERDF, anything like that, you had to jump through hoops. Marjorie and I tried to make sure that the monitoring of projects going forward was more robust than what it had previously been. So it's not the application as such, it's whether the community group or voluntary sector can actually prove that they have done what they said they were going to do.
I think it's a really good point. Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Thomas.
Sorry, Chair, my hand should have been taken down.
Okay. Councillor Lindridge.
So should mine. I beg your pardon.
Can I get someone to move that we move into closed session then, please? Otherwise, we'll be waiting for a while.
Councillor Smith will move into closed session.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And someone to second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Lindridge. So we'll just give a second for the stream to pause.
The meeting's back in open session, Chair.
Thank you, David. Okay, thank you, members. We're now back in open session. Are there any other questions or comments that we wanted to discuss on this matter? Councillor Lindridge, your hand's still up. Were you wanting to? No. Councillor Smith?
I'd just like to say I've got no problems with the recommendations. I genuinely don't. But I would like to add, going forward, that we put a more robust vetting process in. Otherwise, the next time round, I won't agree with it.
Vetting or monitoring?
When they apply, they need to be able to show financial stability, how long that they've been gone for. They do submit accounts on time with the Charities Commission, and then going forward, how they're using the money, whether it's used in the right way, and etc. etc.
Okay. No, that's fair. That's a fair comment. And happy to support that. Councillor Tennant.
Chair, just to, I think we need to make it a little bit more understandable than the way Councillor Smith has explained. I mean, I understand the point. I completely do. I think really it's more a case of monitoring rather than the application. So I think the application process seems perfectly fine as it is. So it's open, so anybody who has a reasonable case to apply for funding can do so. And of course, the decision being made based on what the application is. But it's after the spending of that money, then we need to look back and say, have they actually spent it as they meant during their application? I think that's what Lisa's trying to drive at. Am I right in that, Lisa?
I think she did just clarify it was both points, Councillor Tennant.
Right.
It was both the application and then the monitoring afterwards.
Okay. I mean, it's from my understanding as well. So, but yeah, okay, I understand that now. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Akers-Belcher.
Chair, it was just an observation. I just think, I've received the papers. I'm quite, comfortable with the recommendations. We delegated down the decision making to the committee. And I think it's somewhat ironic that we're spending all this time debating £200,000 to go into the voluntary community sector. That is going to be an excellent return on investment. And yet we've had no probity challenge or scrutiny into the £15 million COVID money that's not going to come to committee till next month.
Okay, thank you. Denise?
It was just to remind members, actually, this is a one-off pot. There won't be another process actually for grant applications because this is out of the COVID money, and that was a previous decision. So if and when the council's ever in a position to actually look at grants going forward with the VCS sector, we can take on board the points that have been raised by members. I would also remind members that when the VCS organisations are commissioned through our procurement process, they do follow our corporate procedure rules, which are set out and have been agreed by members. So just to remind members, it is a one-off pot, and I think to agree with Councillor Akers-Belcher that it was delegated to a panel to make the decision and make recommendations, to members.
Thank you, members, for that debate and for all of those questions. I think we've exhausted that for now. Can we then look at the recommendations as they are in the report? Is there any dissent from the recommendations as set out in the report? No. Okay. We'll go with those recommendations then. Thank you, members. Next one, 7.2, Community Wealth Fund Alliance. Jill, is this you again? No.
Yep, it is. Apologies from Gemma, Chair. She's on leave today. So the 7.2 is a report on the Community Wealth Fund Alliance. So the purpose of this report is to provide members with information about the Wealth Fund Alliance and to seek support from members to sign up. The Community Wealth Fund Alliance is a group of over 290 organisations, including a number of local authorities, calling for the establishment of a community wealth fund that would enable investment in the most left behind neighbourhoods across England. The Community Wealth Fund Alliance is lobbying government to release dormant assets worth up to £4 billion for the creation of the Community Wealth Fund, which would provide long-term investment in those communities. Research shows that there are a significant number of wards across England that are considered left behind, and that's determined based on looking at levels of deprivation, social infrastructure, etc. The details are in section 3.4. A number of left behind communities on that list are in Hartlepool, and that's identified in 4.1. And the purpose of the report at this stage really is, as I said, to seek sign up to this. There's no financial risk. There's obviously at this point in time no guarantee that this funding will be released, but it is a case of if Hartlepool sign up to this and the funding is released, we would obviously be in a position to access additional resources for our most left behind communities. So it's recommended that members note the proposals and consider signing up to the Community Wealth Fund Alliance, either independently as the council or through a collaboration with voluntary and community sector groups, which is how it's been done in some other areas. Thank you.
Jim. Personally, I don't see any negative side of this at all for us. In fact, it seems like a no-brainer, but happy to take comments and questions from other members. Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think when we look at the point 5 risk implications, there are no risks to the council itself. I think it's well worthwhile signing up to this because the potential for it is far greater than not being signed up to it. So I will be supporting this.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Tennant. There's nobody else looking to speak. So the recommendations are set out on page
Chair,
4. Sorry, Councillor Akers-Belcher.
Chair, all I wanted to say is I have no problem with it at all, and I think it's really good. But I know of old, having a look at when you talk about this £4 billion, and after we made a decision, if we go with it, can we get some of the history behind, the organisation? Because people have been petitioning the government to release these assets and the land and Homes and Communities Agency, Crown Builds and blah. It's gone on, well, probably for a decade. And I would just like to know, what progress, while the Alliance has been live, they've actually made in order petitioning government to release this money. Because I think, it is a no-brainer. We should go with it because it's an opportunity, should be released. But we also need to be realistic, because what I don't want people to think is that this council's going to receive a share of £4 billion for these wards, and we need to put it into context. So it might be worth getting some sort of timeline history into the Alliance so that we can put that into the public domain so people know what timeline we're working towards.
I think that's a really good point. Thank you, Councillor Akers-Belcher. Yeah, I think that's something we definitely need to be doing. If there are no other questions or comments, then, as I say, the recommendation is set out on page 4. If there's no dissent, we'll take those recommendations as they are. See no indication from members. Okay, thank you. 7.3, Kilmarnock Road Resource Centre. Director of Resource and Development. Oh, sorry, no, we're going to go to Bev.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the purpose of this report is just to seek approval from the committee for us to offer the Kilmarnock Road Resource Centre for a community asset transfer on a lease basis. And the report set out in section 3 just gives a bit of a history that this property has been used for community use for in excess of 20 years already, and it is currently performing pretty well, offering a number of community-based support services, and the nursery that's operating out of there has received a good Ofsted rating back in 2017. So in view of the kind of the nature and the use of the building and the recent history of it, we're proposing that we offer the premises on a long-term basis by way of a community asset transfer. And this is a recognised means of enabling not-for-profit organisations to deliver their own solutions to local needs and services, and complies with the policy adopted by council set out in the community asset transfer document, which is included in the background documents for this report. The process to ensure that the premises is retained for community use will be set out through an open process that allows interested parties to bid, and will include a requirement for any prospective tenants to demonstrate the suitability in terms of their aims, governance and track record. The process includes a minimum 6 weeks marketing period, during which time tenders will be invited for the opportunity, and interested parties will be required to complete an assessment of their suitability via written tenders, which will then be evaluated. Assuming that we do receive acceptable tenders, we will offer a lease, which will be granted and will include a requirement for restrictions around community uses. Alternatively, if members would prefer, we could look to let the property on a commercial or sell the property, but these courses of action would be less likely to allow us to ensure that we can retain the community uses and services that are currently operating out of there. Section 6 just outlines some of the financial considerations, and the council is currently responsible for covering the repairs and maintenance liabilities. However, any other outgoing and costs are met by the current occupier, and there's currently no income from the property to the council. However, under the asset transfer arrangement, all outgoings, including repairs and maintenance, would be met by the occupier, and confidential Appendix 3 just sets out what the current rental and capital values of the property are. And letting the building under a community asset transfer arrangement will mean that any potential rental income or sale value will be foregone, but this will ensure that the services provided to the community will be maintained. So we're just recommending that the committee approve for us to progress with offering the property on let to as a community asset transfer basis, and to delegate selection of the successful bidder and approval of detailed terms to the Director of Resources and Development. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Bev. Councillor Akers-Belcher.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just want to ask a couple of things. I have no problem with the proposal, but it says that the council receives no income from the organisation. So at the moment, as with other community asset transfers, like, you know, the council receives bills, and then, like, you know, say for utilities, what's the current arrangement for utilities? Like, you know, does the council receive the bills and then they pay them? And what's the option? And also, historically, there used to be a nursery facility within that building. Do we still pay them for that nursery facility, for the child places and things like that?
I don't have the details to hand around what we've got in place with regards to the nursery placements, but I can look into that for you. As I understand it, any of the outgoing costs, such as utilities, should be paid for by the current occupants, and it's just the repairs and maintenance that the local authority are currently picking up. But under the asset transfer process, the occupiers that were successful as part of that that tender process would pick up any rent and repairs and maintenance liabilities as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any issue with the asset transfer as such, but I do have issue with why would it need to go out to tender, because there must have been some reasoning behind why we're going to offer it, but then why would we spend money putting it out to tender?
It's to comply with the process that's set out in the asset transfer document, to comply with the policy.
Right. Yeah, I'm still not happy that it's going to cost us money.
Chair, can I just come in on that point?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I thought there was an item under the Localism Act that, like, you know, you could actually get round going out to tender if you already had an occupant, and they could make an application under the Localism Act to do the direct asset transfer.
Haley. I'll be honest, Councillor, I'm not aware. I'm not sure on that. So,
Chair, I'd also have to look into it in more detail as well. I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
I'm sure it is within there that you don't have to go out to tender.
If there's already an existing person in there. Because it's different, I guess, compared to Greyfields, isn't it? Because that went out to a community asset transfer and it was done as part of a bidding process, but there wasn't an existing tenant there, was there?
Yeah, that's where I was trying to get at.
Yeah. Okay. Should we just 1 second? I'm just going to Chris.
I was just going to suggest, Chair, if the committee are minded, if we can check it after the meeting, but if we can do that without going out to tender and just award to the current occupant, are you happy for us to do that? And then we don't have to wait to try and find it out now. I'm assuming what Councillor Akers-Belcher is saying is correct. I don't know, but assuming it is correct, do you want to proceed on that basis, and then we don't have to try and find it now, if that's okay?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm all right with that. I don't know how other members feel. Councillor Smith.
It was just a question. So you transfer the asset to the Kilmarnock Road Centre, which is fine. What happens if they, in 10 years' time, decide that they no longer want to use the building? Is it their building then to be able to do what they want with? So, like, give it to somebody else, sell it on, etc. Or does it then come back to the council and then we decide what happens to it?
I think the mechanism of return will be outlined in the detailed terms that we'll write, but my expectation is that there'll be a break clause in there, so if they're at the point where they need to hand the property back, it will come directly back into the authority. But again, we can scope out and provide updates to members with what that mechanism looks like.
Yeah, so they wouldn't be able to just then give it to somebody else to be able to do with what they want. No.
Yeah.
No.
It's effectively only on like long-term lease. Okay. Councillor Akers-Belcher.
Chair, I've just had a quick look, and I think it might be down to whether it's determined as a community asset or not, whether or not it would fall under the Localism Act. But I think, if we could make a decision that perhaps if we don't have a problem with it, but if we can avoid using legislation where it's to the existing occupant, and do it that way.
Well, as I say, as far as that, if you're happy to propose that, I'm happy to second that. I have no issue with that we're moving forward. It's simpler and it ensures that the current occupants are able to continue doing it and there's no extra cost to us. So do you want to propose that?
Yes, happy to, Chair.
Yeah, okay, I'll second that. Is there any dissent from that as an option moving forward? No, there doesn't seem to be. So we'll look at that then. Thank you, members. Last two then, so we've got two other items on there, 7.4 and 7.5. They should be on your separate papers. They're about the community governance review for Elwick Parish and also Greetham Parish. I'll hand over to Hayley.
It's Neil Wilson, Chair.
Neil.
Sorry, that's doing next.
Sorry. Chair, yes. I'm bringing two reports today, and they are to present the feedback from the recent community governance reviews in respect of Elwick and Greetham. I'll go through the Elwick one first. So the background to that is that on the 6th of February, a petition was received from 281 residents of Elwick Parish requesting that a community governance review takes place and asking in particular that the area of Wynyard, which is shown in Appendix 1, be removed from Elwick Parish Council and that a separate standalone Wynyard Parish Council Hartlepool be established in relation to that area. In support of that, there were 10 numbered points made by the petitioners, which are shown in Appendix 2. Now, of course, a review enables the council to put in place new arrangements and make changes to current systems and structures. And the government has emphasised that the aim of the review is to bring about improved community engagement and more cohesive communities. The Department for Communities and Local Government, the DCLG, has produced a guidance document in respect of community governance reviews, and that's been followed to the letter in the conduct of this. So there have been two periods of consultation between the 23rd of October and the 4th of December, and then a second period of consultation between the 18th of December and the 29th of January this year. Responses were invited from all local government electors in the area under review, the parish council, local businesses, and public and voluntary organisations. Letters have been sent to all residents, and the consultation was also publicised in the Hartlepool Mail and on the council's social media accounts. Of the 745 consultation letters that were sent out, we received 93 responses. That was at a 12.5% response rate. And of those, 97.8%, 91 people, were overwhelmingly in support of the proposals. There was only actual 2 objections to the proposals, both of whom objected on the basis of the additional level of bureaucracy that had been created by the creation of a new parish. A consistent theme in the support of the proposals is that Wynyard is quite distinct and separate in nature to the rural identity of the rest of Elwick. The responses also point to the benefits of decisions being made on a more local level. The proposal also has the support of the Wynyard Residents Association and Elwick Parish Council itself. Members' attention is drawn to the following points that are made by the DCLG, which are that the general rule is that a parish should be based upon an area which reflects a community identity and interest. New and revised electoral arrangements should come into force at the next ordinary parish elections, which in respect of Wynyard would be 2022. There's also some guidance as to the size of parish councils. So the National Association for Local Councils suggests that there should be a minimum number of 7 parish councillors, and that the typical parish size between 501 and 2,500 electors should be 6 to 12 councillors. The government or respective governments have also issued guidance which essentially says that there should be a strong presumption in favour of the formation of new parishes and a belief that localism is best achieved when led by local communities themselves. So the proposals for consideration by this committee today are to formulate a view in relation to the proposal that was subject to the petition, in that should there be a standalone Wynyard Parish Council Hartlepool, and if so, what should be the size of that new parish, and also what should be the size of the remaining Elwick parish. There are some financial considerations. There's already a concurrent functions payment that's made by the local authority to Elwick of £7,500 in relation to matters such as grass cutting and the like. So there will have to be a readjustment of that, and I believe that the cost will only be established once those functions are taken on board. So the recommendation from this report is essentially to invite members to express their views for the purpose of feeding that back into the Managing Director's report for full council on the 25th. Do any members have any particular questions?
I've got Councillor Tennant with his hand up, Neil.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just one question with regard to the funding that you mentioned, Neil. Payment amount 7,446 per annum. Does that mean that's what Elwick Parish Council receives in its current form, and when it splits, that money will be split?
Essentially, I believe that that's the case, yes, Councillor, albeit we may take on board some of those functions ourselves, so the cost to us may be slightly different to what the parish is actually paying at the moment, but that could only be established once we've actually taken on board those functions.
I accept that, yeah, that the establishment of that will of course take time once you take into consideration the size and the decisions that they make, such like. I get that. I just think that potentially over time that could increase, which increases an impact on the council tax budget. I accept the parish council are not wildly expensive to run, but it is a consideration the council should take into account when new parishes are created. I accept that there seems to be an overwhelming democratic wish for a new parish council. I accept that. I just want to ask more words with regard to funding and whether it's going to be a split in funding or it's just going to be a completely new fund for this specific parish council. So it's just something to consider, I thought.
Councillor Tyne, Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. So my understanding is that so obviously they've got commitments already. The parish council, like Elwick Parish Council's got its commitments. So obviously they've based their budget for the next year on whatever. That is going to be reduced by half. Is that correct?
It would be there or thereabouts. The current precept I understand in respect of Elwick is around about £18.52 per year. Of course, any new parish would be able to set their own precept. And I don't believe there are any referendum limits on the size of that precept. So it will signify a significant reduction in the income for Elwick Parish. And it would be there or thereabouts half, I believe, yes. And then any new parish that's created would set their own precept.
So can I come back, please, Chair?
Yeah.
So the parish council of Elwick could come into financial difficulty with the things that they've already promised, type of thing. And in my day job, I do a school run round Wynneard, and it's normally the estates team of Wynneard do a lot of the maintenance round there. So I think I don't want to make a parish council less fortunate than what it already is. I'm a bit concerned that what they've got put aside for their forthcoming bills and stuff, it's going to be massively reduced for anybody. And I just think we need to take that into account.
Thank you. Councillor Akers-Belcher.
Chair, just on the last point that Councillor Little made, if there's connections there from a business perspective, should that not be declared as an interest? But that's not my question. My question is more to do with the actual basis of creating parishes, and it was all done to strengthen communities. And at the moment, we've been through house building and changes. We've been left with a parish that no longer represents the whole community. And you can see from the numbers that we have two distinct communities now within the current boundary of the Elwick parish. And if we are going to abide by, the advice that comes through from the Department for Communities and Local Government, it would be we can't base something on finance. We should be doing something about strengthening communities. And to strengthen communities, I think we don't have any other option but to listen to the consultation and go down the line there. It's going to be two separate parishes, or all we want to do is perpetuate that as a group of people who are making decisions affecting a wider community that aren't part of the core. And I think, it's right and proper from a democratic level that we allow it to happen.
To be honest, Councillor Akers-Belcher, I completely agree with you. Ultimately, this is a decision that's been taken by the people of there, and I don't think it's for us to stand in the way of the decision that they've decided to take democratically. Councillor Storkle.
Yeah, it's just a support of what you and Councillor Akers-Belcher said. There is overwhelming support from the local residents and Elwick Parish Council itself, and they know their budget, and if they're happy to support, there is two clear distinct communities, and I don't see why we shouldn't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Storkle. I got Councillor Little, where you want to come back.
I just wanted to clarify, it's just, I don't have no business there. It's just basic observation. I'm driving through, 2 different teams do the same job. And I don't have no business connections with those areas.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so the recommendations in the report is, I haven't heard anything from anybody which would suggest that we're going to oppose this, but is there any dissent from the recommendations? No? Okay. Say what, sorry?
Secretary Chair.
Yeah.
It's just if we go to 3.2, so we're saying, yes, there will be a standalone Wynyard Parish Council, and then we need to say what will the council size of number of councillors be in each of the parishes that remain, and the guidance would suggest there are 7 councillors for each, so it's just if that can be confirmed.
Yeah, I do apologise. Councillor Akers-Belcher, you've got your hand up.
Chair, it was just that point that I was going to make that we needed to clarify.
Yeah. So the recommendation as set out there then is for 7 councillors. Is there any objection to that? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's all agreed, thank you. And then do we need to look separately at Greetham, Neil?
Yes, Chair. I won't go into as much detail because the same process has been followed in respect of Greetham. Just by way of background, on the 5th of March 2020, we received a valid petition from 257 residents of the Greetham parish. And they essentially asked that the area that's shown in Appendix 1, which is South Fens, be removed from Greetham Parish Council, but this time without any alternative parish being established. Essentially, the main driver behind this was, I believe, that the area of the South Fens pays at a current precept. Sorry, Councillor Lindridge is beckoning.
Yeah, Councillor Lindridge has put his hand up, yeah. But I'll bring him in once you've finished.
Yes, but this time without an alternative parish being established, and the main driver behind that seemed to be that the area of South Fens is paying a precept to Greetham Parish, but believe that the focus of the spending has always been on Greetham as opposed to South Fens. So essentially it's a case of the participants or the residents of South Fens believing they're not getting value from money from the existing arrangements. So there's been, again, 2 periods of consultation, the same as in the last review, which have run concurrently. 925 consultation letters have been sent out. There were 92 responses, which is at a 10% response rate. And of those responses, 77 people in this review were fully supportive of the proposals. There were 17 people against the proposals. So again, it is still significantly in support of them. And the consultation responses also have to be considered in light of the initial petition of 257 residents who were seeking this. A common theme of the support is that South Fens don't view themselves as being part of a single cohesive community. Again, the belief that the character of the South Fens is different to the more rural character of Greetham. There's also a clear geographical divide, and that being the A689, and the distinct nature and appearance of the areas. Of those who opposed the proposal, it was again a common theme that the status quo should be maintained, that the bureaucracy of this actual review was essentially a waste of money. Members' attention is again drawn to the same points within the DCLG guidance when considering this issue, and the proposals for members to consider today are to form a view as to whether or not South Fens should be removed from Greetham Parish Council, and if so, should Greetham Parish Council remain the same size in respect of councillors. It's currently 7, and again, the guidance would suggest that it should remain at 7, albeit no councillors from the South Fens area. Again, there were some financial considerations. Currently, the concurrent functions payment is around about £1,385. Again, it relates to essentially grass cutting services and the like, and there would be a readjustment of that, and dependent upon how those functions are taken up afterwards. So again, the recommendations are to invite comments from members of this committee to feed into the Managing Director's report for full council on the 25th.
Thank you, Neil. Councillor Lindridge.
Thanks, Chair. Some observations there. I'm currently the ward councillor for Fens and Rosmere, which is going through a ward boundary change. Yeah, it's not for me to judge the will of the residents who put this recommendation. Disappointed that there's only a 10% return out of all the residents. It would appear that it's only a very small minority in relation to the whole of Fens and Rosmere. What does concern me, though, is under the 2.10 that the Greetham Village don't see themselves as part of the South Fens, but the South Fens is also going to be part of the new boundary, and that is a concern. We have got a divide down the A689 with Greetham, which does split the ward. But we're going to have to come together as the new Fens and Greetham. And I would just like to ask, as the precept that's paid at the moment is paid by the South Fens, and there's 300-400 houses on there. And I understand that they don't feel as if the monies have been spent on the South Fens. In the main, they've been spent in Greetham. That probably could have been negotiated a little bit better in the past. However, I wouldn't like to end up with Greetham being marginalised and having to pay extra because you're going to have less people paying the precept, which could put pressure on the community. And again, I'm not judging it, this is an observation. I noticed there was a figure of £1,385 for grass cutting and the likes. Now, could I ask Chris Little on that basis that if we're going to fund that, and I think we should as a council, we can't marginalise the residents of Greetham if this goes through, yeah? I'm presuming then, have you taken into consideration there'll be the new home builds? There'll probably be another 100 houses going on there paying an additional precept that wasn't there before. Am I right in saying that, Chris?
I think at the moment we haven't taken into account any impact of these changes because they haven't gone through yet. I think the point I'd make is we've put the numbers in the report in the scale of the authority's budget. Our parishes are very small and it'll only make small differences. And I think I don't think these changes, if I understand it right, are going to come in for next financial year. So it's for future year's budget. Just to give a little bit of context, the Greetham precept for a Band D property per year is £472. So Greetham on that basis has got council tax income of about £3,000. It's not huge.
Yeah, like I say, my concern was if I do stand as the councillor on the Fens in Greetham, the new ward, of the views that's been expressed there, I'm a bit disappointed thinking that I'm trying to, or if I do stand, I'll be trying to represent a community which it looks as though you've made a statement, or the statement's been made under 210, that they don't see themselves as part of a single cohesive community because of the boundary. Now, and that's something you might not change yourself, but obviously I wouldn't like to think that the residents of Greetham then think that because of a few people on the South Fens, or the houses on the South Fens, then it gates them and they don't want to be part of that, because the Fens itself is a bigger community and we want the Fens, the South Fens and Greetham to be pulling together here. So that was just my observations in terms of trying to keep the community together. I'm not against this situation because I'll go with the will of the people. If that's what is wanted, then I'll follow their lead. Thanks, Chair.
No, it's all right. If I may just say, Councillor Lindridge, as a councillor who represents an area that is in its current form, and even in the form it'll take after the boundary review, the headland itself, or the parish of the headland, does have a parish council. That boundary stops, and it doesn't include the central estate. It doesn't include the marina or Burbank, and that doesn't mean that the ward as a whole doesn't feel connected, and those people on the headland don't feel connected to those of the central. And I think, yes, you're right. You raised some very valid points, but it's just about doing some work, I think, and I think there's a lot of work that can be done, and positive work that can be done, where it wouldn't have to be seen as a negative, I don't think.
Sorry, just to come back on that, fully appreciate what you're saying there, and it's been really difficult because of the COVID situation. I haven't been able to, or anybody else for that matter, not to find out the views of the residents within the Greetham area, or for that matter, my own South Fens, other than me walking around, generally walking the dog, so to speak. I haven't been able to sort of get to discuss the important issues. But that's just one of them things that happens with everybody. Obviously, if I had that opportunity, I could come back with some stronger views and to support what you're saying. But we have to get on with it.
Yeah.
Thanks for your comments.
Okay. No, thank you. Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief question on the section 3, which is to do with the number of councillors. That you propose 7. Can I ask, what is the existing number of councillors, and would, if it's to be approved, would the 7 proposed councillors not come into effect until the 2022 parish council elections? Therefore, the existing arrangements would remain so until then.
Sorry, Councillor, you broke up a little bit there, but I maybe should have said that the existing arrangements are that there are 7 parish councillors currently. 4 are actually from the South Fens and 3 from the village itself. So the proposal would be for there to remain 7, but obviously all from the actual village. The next parish elections for Greetham, I believe, are actually 2023, which come into force then. So there would be time for both parishes that we've been talking about today to review their finances accordingly in preparation for it. In respect of the actual precepts, the Greetham precept is quite small in comparison with the Elwick one. So just by way of indication, I believe the precept for Greetham is £4.73 per annum, whereas the Elwick one is about £18 per annum. So the figures at Greetham aren't exorbitant and are quite reasonable. But of course, the parish itself would have the opportunity to increase that precept if it felt that was appropriate. But that would obviously be when it came into force. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Well, but yeah, in a way it does. So what you're saying is that Greetham Parish Council at the moment has 7 councillors, and that would remain to be the case.
Yes, yeah.
Even though the size is being reduced. I thought.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, the National Association recommends a minimum of 7 parish councillors. So Greetham will still have 773 electors, which makes it a reasonable size in parish terms in any event. So we'd still recommend that the 7 be appropriate.
Okay, I wasn't aware that the minimum was 7. So yeah, that's fair. Thanks, Neil. Cheers.
Thank you. Jim, your hand's still up. Do you want to come back, or was it just?
No, that's no problem there. Right. I'm happy with that.
So the recommendations are as set out in the report then under 3, with the again with the suggested size of the parish council of being 7 councillors as well. Is there any dissent from the recommendations?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Take as well. Last one then, 8.1 corporate Procurement Quarterly Report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the quarterly report on our contract procedure rules, which we required by the Constitution to report. There is an appendices attached and also some papers on pink, and I think that earlier one member did indicate they had a query on the pink papers. So if that's the case, we'll need, with your permission, to go back into closed session.
Yeah, Councillor Marshall, were you still wanting to bring any in? Bring a question forward on this?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Can someone move then that we'll go into closed session?
Move to closed session.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Someone and Marshall seconded. Thank you. David, could we just pause the stream, please?
Okay, we're back in open session, Chair.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Okay, so following the debate there, we now move to the recommendations as set out in the report at 14. And the recommendation is that the committee note the report, and we've commented on the report as well. Is there any dissent from that? No. Okay, thank you all very much. There are no other items which I consider urgent, and therefore we'll just move that. I'll see you all again, if not before, on the 15th of March at 10 o'clock for what I think will be our final Finance and Policy meeting. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a good week.
No.